Guy Benson from townhall.com. Pleased to be joined by Richard Dreyfuss, an Academy Award-winning actor. Many of you probably recognize him. I'm admiring your cap, I must say.
Thank you.
Before we get into the substance of why you're here, I really want to take a moment of personal privilege and let you know that one of my fondest memories with my family when it comes to film is sitting in our basement watching What About Bob and just howling, all of us, all different ages. Absolutely hysterical. When you have fans come up to you on the street, what movie do they typically ask you about most, would you say?
What About Bob? Jaws. What About Bob? Jaws? Mr. Holland. Mm-hmm. And then varying degrees.
What's the movie that you're proudest of in your career?
If I had to be proud of one,
You have to.
I would say Mr. Holland.
Yeah, no, it's an inspirational film. Another film that you were in was W, where you depicted the former Vice President Dick Cheney. And before
Did do that?
you did. And when my colleague Ed was interviewing you, I heard some folks here at CPAC walking by, and is that Richard Dreyfuss? And someone said he said some awful things about Dick Cheney. And so I have to ask you. I feel, like I would be remiss if I didn't say, look, here's thousands of conservatives at this event. You're here trying to spread a message that I think a lot of us can agree on, but some people might not want to be receptive right out of the gate to what you're saying because you've made some comments about the former vice president, someone who a lot of people here, really admire. What would you say to some people here who might take issue with some of the things that you've said?
Well, first of all, I would say, without any demur, that I was wrong in saying what I said, and for that, I apologize. I gave the impression that I was agreeing with statements that I would consider uncivil.
Right. Like Dick Cheney passing away, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I don't want Dick Cheney to die for his sins. I want him to live for his sins, actually. And
in your mind, those sins would be what?
Understand that I witness for civility. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean I've had a lobotomy and that I have nothing harsh to say about the Bush administration. I do, because it attacked the foundational principles upon which this country is based on. The Patriot Act, the confusion between business and office holding, the fact that apparently there's a law on the books that says that the executive and new vice president, have to turn over their medical records, and Dick Cheney just said, no, that the breaking of law, whether it's Clinton who broke an oath or any executive, has to learn to take the shots.
Sure.
But those shots must be given in a civil manner. They can be angry, but I will not surround my apology with any excuse making. I don't want to do that. I am wrong to have said what I said, or to have given the impression that I was agreeing with something that actually wasn't said that day. But
Ed Schultz, it was a comment from an MSNBC contributor.
Yeah, and it wasn't just what he said, but he said, and they said, and other things.
Right.
I should have been more aware that there are 3 towns in LA in the United States, you have to be very, very careful about how you speak. Mm-hmm. LA, New York, Washington.
Yep.
In DC, if it does not come from DC, it is therefore inauthentic, you're a rube, and an idiot. If it doesn't come from New York, from Vanity Fair and the glossy magazines, you're a rube. And if it comes from LA, hold on to your seats. Because in LA, what Alfred Hitchcock called the MacGuffin, the thing that the film is not really about, gives an excuse for the movie, like the letters of transit in Casablanca, That's a MacGuffin. In LA, the MacGuffin is real. You can work for 2 years really hard and make $1 billion. And when that's true, however rare, hold on to your soul, because your best friend will knife you and you will knife him.
Well, I would argue that's probably true in this town as well, in certain precincts. Let's be honest. So I don't think we're going to agree on the role of the Bush administration in breaking of laws, but that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to mine. And I think a lot of people watching probably appreciate the fact that you're owning up to that and apologizing, because sometimes we all say things that we regret. And I think that that's big of you to do it. And look, let's move on from the politics, because you're here to push something that really shouldn't be political in any sense, really. It's something that people like you and I should be able to sit here next to each other and nod in agreement, and yet it's this kind of spreading problem, this cancer on our country.
Yep.
Why are you here? What's your case that you're trying to make?
Nobody understands that history really happened. They don't really believe that. They think that history is a series of photos, Kodaks. And in fact, history happened. In fact, parties grew and had power and died and turned into other parties, and that the circumstances of Friday changed the absolutes of Tuesday. And this is part of what we say is politics. But politics, if you look at it closely, is this. Politics is the secular arm of faith. It asks the same question: how can people live together in some sense of freedom and mobility and liberty and opportunity? And that's the same question that is asked by every Western religion. And the answer is the same. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you.
I've heard that somewhere, I think.
Hopefully from me. And I believe that America's greatest strength has always been its diversity and its knowledge that as steel is folded strong metal, folded into something stronger, so is America, made stronger by its diversity. If you try...
And our founding principles, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, our founding principles can only be taught. They are not inherited.
Right.
No gene will ever be found that gives us a leg up on running a Republican democracy.
Right, it's the old adage that freedom is always one generation away from extinction. And you're concerned that could be the case if education in this country on basic civics doesn't significantly improve.
On basics on anything. You don't know how to hammer a nail, cook, sew, or build a chair, or build a table. And when our homes are illegally foreclosed on, the people who lived in that home don't know how to light a fire and save themselves. The institutions we have always relied on, such as political parties, to solve our problems, are now part of the problem.
Was there a moment in your mind where this problem crystallized and you decided, I really have to use some of my influence and celebrity to do something about it?
No. I decided when I was 56, around there, after the 2000 election, all my friends were saying Bush was the enemy, Bush was the enemy. And I said, no, it's not Bush, it's us. It's our lack of outrage. It's our lack of curiosity. That's the real culprit here. And I went to Oxford to find out what was going on. And when I turned around and looked at things that were going on, people were coming over to me in Oxford and saying, why are you doing this in America? We need this in Europe. And I said, wait a minute, I thought you had it. I thought that's what we were doing. We were going to emulate you because you had it. We didn't. No one has it. And the question becomes serious. Are we emotionally mature enough for Republican democracy, because Republican democracy is based upon representation and trust. And we have gone full tilt toward not trusting our representatives.
I can agree with that, and I think that there's an effort to repair that, certainly among the party that I identify with. In my view, you'd probably disagree. I know you got to run here. I do have a question.
I don't got to run, you got to run.
You're a very busy man. I don't want to keep an Academy Award winner sitting here for far too long, but you're in the middle of this big conservative... Have you been to CPAC before? This is your first CPAC?
First time.
This might be the most interaction we've ever had with this many conservatives all at one time. Right?
Yep.
Is there a conservative in the contemporary political scene, on the scene today, that you really admire?
Scott Faulkner, my executive director, Scott Faulkner, is a conservative Republican who carries Robert's Rules of Order in his back pocket. And he thinks that the the General Accounting Office is the sexiest office in the federal government. And he is a person whose honesty, whose sense of honor, is as high as I would ever expect in anyone, friend or foe. And finding him was the payoff and worth the price of admission.
Do you think that part of the issue in Hollywood is that there are so few conservatives that sometimes folks will get insulated? It's easy to kind of otherize people like
most
me?
people have a misunderstanding about Hollywood. Hollywood is not 90-10 liberal conservative. It's about 40-60. It's about of the lefties. The left is splintered in 100 different ways. And if they have an argument about what pencils to use, they leave the party. And conservatives don't. They argue, but they don't leave. And that's their strength. And Hollywood has always been much more conservative than you thought. And certainly that's true of the studio heads and the below-the-line labor. The talent, the actors, are more liberal than not, but that's 40-60. That's only 60-40. And I mean, Tom from Hawaii, the guy who played the detective on the Hawaii show. Tom Selleck. Okay. Tom Selleck, Bruce Willis. There are people from Hollywood who you'd be shocked.
There's a couple of them.
Yeah.
I'll talk to Andrew Breitbart and
they
ask him.
talk about how blacklisted they've been, although they've been working steadily for 35 years.
Richard Dreyfuss, Academy Award winner. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for stopping by and having the courage to show your face in a place like this. And we really do appreciate your work and your craft, because you're very good at what you do, even if you're wrong about Dick Cheney.
I appreciate it. I like to